When Gavin first pitched the idea to me of traversing the Alaska range by paraglider, I was instantly like, how in the world are we actually going to cover this? You can't plan for a project like this. It was something that was totally untested, backed up by an individual that had a dream. You have to show up, and then you just have to roll with it. We are an incredibly light, bare-bones team here. Only 3 people, myself, Cameron Sylvester, and Pablo Durana. The more people you add, the more complex the logistic gets. In the sense that we need flexibility because we have no idea where the story is gonna go, we're kind of matching our logistic with an aircraft that has flexibility. The Super Cub is essentially the backbone of our production operation here. It feels like a go-kart. Essentially a chromoly frame with some canvas stretched around it and a little 150 horsepower engine that takes it through the sky.
If you told a kid in grade 1 to build a plane with paper mache, that's pretty much what a Super Cub would look like to scale.
You know, the engine starts up and it sounds just kind of like average.
It's a very fragile looking craft that doesn't look like it has any place in the sky.
And we're gonna fly it into the biggest mountains in the world. But the Super Cub is like the quintessential Alaskan bush plane. It can go anywhere. Like these guys are putting the planes down in places that they've never landed at before and maybe no one's ever landed at before. And they're totally fine and comfortable with that. The further we get into the project, the more I'm kind of like, yeah, the Super Cub is like the tool of the trade here. Anytime you bring pilots into the equation, logistics get more complicated. Like pilots love logistics. And on this project, we have 2 plane pilots, a helicopter pilot flying Cineflex, and then we have 2 paragliders who also believe they are pilots. So each one of these guys has different visions on what the logistics should be or how it should work out. Hey, this is a good point, Gavin. I mean, we do believe in you guys and that you're gonna fly, but you're right. So when you push and mesh all these pilots into one equation and try to come up with a plan that works and where people are gonna be in the air at certain points, it's complicated. We're not even gonna commit to going down there and filming that. I'm just trying to understand that.
Because for a few reasons. Because you said you really want a cross-country paragliding, and
Yes.
I just don't know that it's gonna work.
Gavin and Dave decided at the beginning of this project that they were going to be entirely self-sufficient, except for batteries and media. More often than not, it seems like they're out in the sticks where there isn't an opportunity to drop that kind of gear.
So we've been getting around that by dropping care packages.
These care packages of batteries and media.
We threw them in some cardboard, wrapped it up in some plastic, gave them to Paul, one of our support pilots, with GPS coordinates of where the guys were.
And having Paul, fly above, get as low as he can, and simply throw the care package out of the window of the plane. There was a little bit of breakage, but we did get them the goods, and we are still able to record as a result. We definitely wanted to capture what happens on the ground just as much as what happens in the air, and the only way to do that is to bring along one of the production crew.
We're fortunate to have Pablo Durana here, who just signs himself up for suffering on a regular basis. He's putting a backpack on with a camera and doing 2-3 days of bushwhacking right alongside these guys.
Holy shit.
When they were hiking, I was kind of going through the same struggles. I mean, just going through the snow, post-holing, down to your waist, walking down a glacier river, going through the alder, everything just sucked.
It makes me realize that we can't complain that much because we've got Pablo, who's basically a reindeer, who can carry a pack like a grizzly, chasing us for miles and miles and miles. And it's also kind of makes me feel like, okay, maybe I'm not that rad. because these guys are running around with tripods that weigh as much as my pack.
It's one thing to come out here and make pretty pictures, but we're trying to tell a story. We're kind of using cinematic cameras and, nice lenses, but then trying to stick with the story as it unfolds.
We're shooting on gyro-stabilized cameras set up on helicopters for the aerial footage. We have RED cameras for ground and long lens angles, all the way down to DSLRs as well as GoPros for the great POV angles.
Gavin and Dave set up the expedition with a pretty simple premise.
In days where conditions weren't accommodating for flying, they'd be hiking.
And that sounds great on paper. The guys got in the air and they flew like 25 or 30K.
Oh, buddy. Yeah. It's pretty on. It is insane.
Day 2, the reality of this expedition set in.
Yesterday was awesome, and then today was just a big dose of reality. 3 miles in 4 hours.
They still have hundreds of kilometers to move through this terrain.
Holy shit, this trip we're not gonna make it.
I think from a more typical definition, some people might say that we're failing.
On face value, we're failing right now.
We're at the tipping point where if this doesn't work, we're just not going to make it. It has to work now.
But as you start to go through hardships along the way, you get even more invested.
It's past me saying I want to have a big flight. It's way past that. We need it. Food-wise, time-wise, route-wise. The logical finish to our route now is to make it through Denali National Park. That was our main goal the entire trip. We've worked so hard to get to it. It's all come down to this moment. We'll fly our gliders through the snow, through the rain, behind the lee side of the mountains. We're willing to go to our threshold.
No one's ever done this. No one's ever paraglided across Denali or Fork, or I would even go so far as call them pioneers. We had been waiting for so long for this flight, and it was really a turning point for the film. They went for it.
I'm nervous as hell, but right now we got to be positive and try to make this work. We'll see.
To come here close to the Arctic Circle and try and fly over North America's highest peak at over 20,000 feet, it's almost absurd to the uninitiated. And even to our inner group of friends, it's still kind of difficult to swallow that we're up here in this moment, at this location, and fly over North America's highest summit.
The Denali flight was that moment when we knew we had a story. We had a climax. They'd flown across North America's highest peaks.